This is Talk Toomey. Your host, Joshua Toomey, bring you epic rants, anecdotes, and interviews with heavy hitters from hardcore
A new life begins!
to hair metal. This is Talk Toomey.
All right, guys, let's welcome back to the show, Mark Hunter, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Just enjoying this quarantine we got going on. How about yourself?
The same here, man. It's definitely nuts, man. Not having to, I don't know. I guess I'm kind of a introvert, like to stay home, so it's not really affected me too much.
Yeah, I'm kind of there too, but like the memes that are going around, it's just a bit, as soon as you tell no, that's exactly when you want to leave. So.
Well, I guess we'll get into a little bit of the heavy stuff before we get into the heavy stuff of Chimaira. But with your cancer that you had a while back, I mean, does that are you under that category of what is it, medically susceptible to this coronavirus and it could be bad?
So I don't think so. I wasn't on any sort of medication, and basically my situation was resolved via surgery.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to take any sort of chemotherapy or radiation or anything like that, thankfully. And oddly enough, I mean, I'm going to get tested to see if I have the antibodies, but I think that both me and my girlfriend have already had it. We were sick most of February, and it was with really bad chest-related stuff and coughing. And we're, of course, we've been watching this thing since January, but there were no tests being done or quote unquote cases in America. But I definitely think it's been here now probably for a lot longer than we just didn't have any tests. So how can you say it was here? So.
Yeah. I mean, like I keep saying, back in December around Christmas, I was just, I typically get, maybe sick once a year or something, but this year was worse than normal and, had pretty much every symptom that you could have of the coronavirus. So I feel like it's been around for a little bit, but, hopefully we'll get it out of here soon and we can get back to normal.
Yeah, it is bizarre. So, strange times. So hopefully we can entertain some folks here and talk about some heavy music and some nostalgia and the stuff that'll keep their mind, especially, me personally.
Yeah.
Anything else I can, otherwise I'm sitting on Twitter like, oh my God, they're going to lock us in their houses like they did in China.
Yeah, man, it's nuts, man. Doing the idea of going, track by track of Pass Out of Existence, which we will get into in a minute, man. It's like a total nostalgia trip. And it's funny because you and I have we have an online relationship. We're friendly online, but kind of putting this album back on, I was like, oh man, I might fanboy out a little bit on this one.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm in.
Well, cool, man. Well, all right. Well, let's dive into Pass Out of Existence, released August 21st, 2001, if Wikipedia is to be believed here, recorded.
I'm going to stop you right there.
Okay.
They're incorrect.
Well,
that is not a fact.
Well,
Wikipedia lies. This is fake news. We're starting off on the wrong foot, Wikipedia.
All right, Wikipedia.
October 2nd, 2001. The initial scheduled release might have been August, but it definitely got pushed back. And the reason it got pushed back was because of the Roadrunner merger with Island Def Jam.
Oh, nice. Well, all right. So we've got the
Sorry
data.
to interrupt you.
No, we're good, man. Well, is this correct? Recorded at Third Stone in Hollywood, California.
That is factual.
And then produced by Mudrock, Andrew Murdoch.
Yes, and Mudrock at the time was known for producing Godsmack.
Yeah, that name's popped up a lot. I know the name. When I saw it today, I was like, oh yeah, he did a lot of stuff. Well, let's start with that. How did you guys choose Mudrock to produce this?
So that's an interesting story. Originally, we actually wanted Dino from Fear Factory to produce our album, and he was one of our earliest champions for the band, if you will. And he was definitely a voice that was tapping on the shoulder of Roadrunner to basically pay attention to us. we always thought it would be cool to have Dino just get involved. We were big Fear Factory fans, and the further things started going along in the process, the more and more we started to realize that probably wasn't going to be a reality. And then, of course, they got busy with their own project by the time we finally got around to recording. So Fear Factory would have been recording Digimortal at the time. So meanwhile, our A&R, the guy that signed us was Kevin Estrada. He was from the Los Angeles area. He wound up playing our demos for Mudrock, and they were just friendly. Mudrock was producing a band that didn't really make much noise on Roadrunner. They were called Anyone, and Mudrock was like, man, this band's unique. I'd like to, take a stab at it. And we thought it was unique to be like, the guy from that did Godsmack wants to work with us. Like, what would that do for our sound? I certainly thought that Godsmack's guitar tone was really heavy.
Right.
It's one of those things that, just cuts through on basic speakers. So, it sounds great. And so I thought from a production standpoint, it was just a unique idea. And partly it was just, basically the whole, wow, you're flattered that some guy that just has a platinum album that's charting wants to work with us. So we should probably pay attention to this. So it was, basically you heard the band and was a fan, and we were like, well, that's cool. Well, let's do it. Let's try it out.
Now, getting signed to Roadrunner, was that any part of the relationship you guys had with Spineshank and Mikey from Spineshank?
It definitely helped. Our initial goal from the start of this band was to get signed to Roadrunner. I mean, that was like the label that I grew up loving every single band, and basically helped mold me as a metal dude. And so they were a goal. And I don't really even know how, but fate had it that Roadrunner saw us actually on our first tour for This Present Darkness. We went on a couple 2-week tour with a band called Cold Pits, and we were both like bands that were doing well on CMJ charts back in the day, which
right.
Does that even still exist? I don't even know.
No idea.
But it's basically college radio. Like, so when you're a new band, you're like, whoa, they're playing us on college radio. That's a huge thing. And so our bands toured together, and it was a total mess. We played in front of the average of 15 to 20 people a night. And we wound up getting to do a showcase for Roadrunner in New York City. So that's when Roadrunner first saw us. And when Spineshank came around, we were already starting to gain some momentum in our hometown and our region, actually. So we were able to command a good support slot for them. And that was just by chance. We had the same manager at the time. We had just hooked up with Scott Koenig, and they were with Scott Koenig. And Scott also had managed Fear Factory and Biohazard and Downset and all these cool bands we looked up to.
Was it King Artist Management?
Yeah, King Artist Management. Good memory. Yeah. And so I just, we were like, hey, we're manager mates. Like, what else do you call it, right? And I don't even know what came over me, but I was just sitting back there with Mikey, and I was like, dude, can we just go on the rest of the tour with you? And, can we just open up? And he was like, fuck yeah. Like, just, without hesitation. Anyone that's ever met Mikey from Spineshank and hung out with him just knows he's a dude that if you were like, hey man, I need a brand new shirt. Can you give me yours? He'd be like, yeah, fuck yeah, dude, give it to me. So here, I'll give it to you. He's just one of those dudes, like always just willing to help. And so next day we loaded up the Ford Taurus and think it was a Chevy Bronco or something, whatever Matt DeVries had. Matt wasn't even in the band yet at the time. He was just like our friend that wanted to drive us on this little tour. And we followed Spineshank around and opened the tour. It was us, Boiler Room, Nonpoint, and Spineshank. And it took us basically through the South, a couple places in the Midwest. It was a good couple, 2-3 weeks. My memory's a little hazy at the moment. But because of that tour, things got real interesting with Roadrunner, because Roadrunner by this point had sent us an offer. And while we were on this tour, Universal saw us, and Nonpoint talked to Universal about us. And then Universal sent us an offer.
Oh, wow.
So we wound up getting caught in a bidding war on that tour because we were doing really well. And we just showed all this initiative that, like, we're going to just drop everything in our lives, jump in a car, and go on tour because this national act said we could. We got paid $50. We got paid $50 a night because we had an agent. Luckily, we were starting to like make moves, and our agent was able to get us $50 a night and some water and stuff like that. Some promoters paid us more because they saw our value. They hooked us up, and they're like, man, these guys, are sitting in a car and stuff like that. And like, some promoters are just cool like that. They hook you up with extra food or an extra $50. And it worked out really well for us. And our deal from Roadrunner, we came out of that with an extra $0 at the end of our contract. So that was just really worth our effort.
Well, Roadrunner for a long time, and I don't know if they still are, but they were known for kind of just a standard, 7-album deal and all that stuff. So you guys got around that a little bit?
We got around it. We were definitely in it for the long haul with them. And that obviously changed later during our path. We were able to get out of the contract way later in life. But since we're talking about the present of being in not present, but you know what I mean? We're back in 2001. At the time, we were able to negotiate things that were pretty unprecedented for the time. We were able to secure keeping our own merchandise, which was not common for them. That was like a Blue Grape tie-in usually. And we kept our own publishing, and we kept we pretty much had everything. Obviously the royalty rates are what they are, and then we got a huge advance. And like, while that was awesome, it was also like a downfall for us, because, not to jump too ahead on the successes or failures of Pass Out of Existence, because that's besides the point, but we had blown our load financially by the time it came to promoting our second album. So it's as a young band, it was cool to like, whoa, we were just able to negotiate all this money on our behalf, but we also didn't really do us any favors in the long run. It actually made things worse. Yeah, but keeping the merch and keeping the publishing, and we've maintained that for life. So actually we finally sold our publishing, at least a chapter of our publishing at one point in our career, but by that point it didn't matter to us. So, but yeah, it was, we pulled some cool moves, and it was because of Nonpoint and because of Spineshank. Spineshank were very vocal on like, don't let Roadrunner do this. Don't let him do this, because this is what fucked us. And then of course Nonpoint, we're on a major label, and they're like, well, make sure you get this because we get this, and make sure you get this because we get that. And both of those bands really helped us get an amazing deal, as well as our manager and lawyer, Ian Friedman, at the time.
To throw his name out there, I haven't heard it yet, but what was Tom Hazard's role in all of this? So
Tom, we worked with in the beginning. He came into our circle through our keyboardist Chris, and Chris was kind of like early on on the internet before it was like a thing. He had his own zine. He was early friends with the PRP when they were still Pimp Rock Palace.
Oh yeah.
And so we're going back some time. This is late 90s, and he knew Tom through, I think, concert trading, and they'd met at a show or something. And he just sent our album to Tom, and then Tom liked it and wanted to start getting involved. And by the time we got to the Roadrunner era, Tom was still there, but it was more of a back seat. We were more hands-on with Scott at the time. And basically Tom was just there as, because he was there from the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't something that he needed to be, you know, we saw it through with him.
Yeah. Okay.
And then after that, there was really, we felt it like the managerial side would be better left to Scott, whereas I think Tom's assets were being able to get music played for record labels.
Right.
It's more like an A&R than a manager.
All right. Well, let's get into this, the album title and album cover. What does Pass Out of Existence actually mean?
It's kind of an interesting one. I don't think I've ever been asked that, and the album's going to be 20 years old next year.
Right.
I was on this whole vibe of the word disappear, and when I was researching the word, I believe I saw the phrase, and I guess the theme of that album was dealing with. So it's our first album. So a lot of the material is, especially, you know, growing up, it's left over from, you know, it's basically everything I could have. So through my whole life. So a lot of it was a lot of depression and getting rid of negative thoughts and darker thoughts and suicidal thoughts and anything that was ever like negative. My goal was always with music to touch on that and focus on that, but also use it as a way to deal with it and move on from it. So I don't know, like hardening your fists as a fighter, right?
Yeah.
The more you keep doing it, the better you are at it. So I guess my therapy would be dealing with something that was emotional and the harder things, and then you know, hardening my fists over and over again, punching the wood like Beatrix Kiddo in Kill Bill or something over and over again until it's no longer a thing. So long story short, it's disappear basically.
Okay. And the album cover?
Album cover was a friend of Chris Spacuzza's through the internet, and he was from Scotland. His name is Neil, and it was just something he had come up with. I don't know that there was much concept behind it. We weren't at a stage in our band where we had a vision like that. I think it was just like, hey man, that looks cool.
Right.
There wasn't anything else beyond that. And afterwards, I always thought, like, actually when I first saw it, I always thought it looked like the Phantasm Ball. So I'm like, yeah, that's, you know, I'll go with that because that's a little more like up my alley. But yeah, long story short, it just looked badass, and you know, there's really nothing behind it.
Can you remember any like alternate covers that you guys maybe were looking at, or was this kind of the one the whole time?
From my recollection, that it was basically like, hey, this dude's going to do it. He's a badass designer. And it was kind of in the earlier days. Again, we're in, you know, 2000. So anyone that was like able to manipulate artwork like that, it's, you know, maybe not impressive now looking at it because we see so much. But back then, that type of Photoshop work or whatever he used, it was cutting edge for that time frame. So we were, you know, just like, hey man, whatever this guy wants to do, we're just happy that he wants to work with us.
All right. So track 1, Let's Go. From what I can tell, lyrically, basically you've already talked about it, but it was a lot of, you're growing up, you're about 22, 23 when this album comes out. So, I mean, you're kind of getting rid of all those, the emotions and feelings from growing up. And, it's just like letting go of your past. That's what I get from it. What are your recollections of this song?
Yeah, kind of. Close. It's more like can't letting go, because that's the chorus is like can't let go. So it's like why do these things keep coming up? Why do they? You think that you're getting rid of it, but it'll keep manifesting. Cyclical stuff like that. But yeah, again, you're correct that the song exists because of those things. Musically, I remember that was if I'm not mistaken, the opening riff, the really dissonant sounding chords was Jason Hagar, our original guitarist. Mm-hmm. That seems like his style. He came from a hardcore background, so a lot of our dissonant chord type songs, especially in the earlier stuff, that was his style. And I know Rob also came up with a lot of the riffs on that one. So that's a Rob and Hagar song.
Well, that intro riff, just to say on the intro riff alone, what a way to start an album, man. It's just so like grabs you right away. If that's the type of music you like, there's no turning back from that opening riff.
Man, I'm glad you see that, because it's been my task a lot of the times in the band is to look at it from that perspective of what do I consider an opening track, right? Or like, hey, that should be the lead track. And yeah, I remember hearing that and thinking to myself that the opening riff, especially with the way that it's sampled and kind of like manipulated sonically before it actually really kicks in. I thought that that's something that you can extend for a live show and come out to, and that always seemed to work out really cool, because then people remember it's like the first thing you hear. So yeah, it's a really good riff.
Anything else on that one?
No. I mean, we haven't played it in a long time. Well, we haven't played in a long time, but it was like kind of an on and off staple. So as we dive into this album, and I think a lot of fans already know it's not our most. This album isn't like a proud moment for us, and I'm sure like as we keep going on, reasons will appear. But this one wasn't one that we weren't ashamed of or anything. Like, we played this song on a Slayer tour, right? Like, we didn't think we would get laughed off stage with that song. It was heavy enough, and it had. It just had a good groove. So, I mean, it was something we were proud of, and proud enough, obviously, to lead off the album with it.
All right, so Dead Inside.
So this is one where this song got us signed. This was it. And it was the first song that basically utilized Chris as our keyboardist. And we didn't have a keyboardist on our EP, This Present Darkness, but he was our friend next door in the rehearsal space. He had a band next door. And he just started hanging out, and through mutual conversations, you could just tell he wasn't happy in his band. And he and I liked stuff like Nine Inch Nails and Ministry, but we also liked some of the bands like, like that first Soulfly record had DJ Lethal on it and stuff. And just that whole scene was going on with, incorporating DJs or keys and stuff like that into music. And I think that's because we're all product of, like hip hop and metal and industrial music. Right. So, that was like his first contribution. Like that sample that starts the song, he started playing that. And again, Hagar, or maybe it was me, I can't remember, it was Hagar. He started playing that bow, and like it was like, whoa, there's a song there.
Yeah.
And it just came to life. And originally that song had to have been like, man, we used to do this really long, like 4 to 5 minute middle, like extended version before we ever cut it down. Right. And like, man, that song was almost like 8 or 9 minutes in its original form. And it wasn't until we got it and actually got into the studio, and, Ben Schigel, who has always helped us kind of arrange our material a little better, we cut it down to a lot less, and, it was a lot more focused. But yeah, there was like this really weird jam in the middle, and it got like all like trippy, and that shit just went all by the wayside. And that's a good collaborative song. Like everyone had a piece of that. There's a couple of Rob Arnold riffs in there. There's a couple me riffs. There's a couple Hagar riffs. Andals definitely had a big part in writing it. Obviously, Chris did. If he wouldn't have started playing that sample, that song wouldn't exist. So everyone, was a big part of that. It was our biggest song for a long time, and it definitely was the song that got us signed. And of course, we have the Farm Club presentation to always look back on with great pride and happiness.
I was watching watching old clips today, and that popped up, and I watched it for a few minutes. I was like, I just can't do this. I almost feel bad for you watching it. Like it's, man,
let me tell you about it, because a lot of people would like to know about that stuff. It was a dream come true. I mean,
you're on TV.
We get a phone call, and they're like, we're not even signed yet, and we're like, we're gonna fly you out to LA. You guys are gonna play with all these mainstream bands. You're gonna get paid for it. They're gonna pick you up in a limo. We're like, what? So we're playing the show, and we had no idea it was going to be a fake crowd. So it's just like all these like paid models and stuff in the front row, and like screaming and howling, which is not something that has ever happened at a Chimaira show. Like attractive girls like, woo, we love you guys. Like that just doesn't exist. It's like sweaty metal dudes that are just pissed off. So, it just was uncomfortable from the get-go. But the other thing too is they edited it in a way that cuts the song a little bit. And we had also played Severed. So it seems that like I'm really winded from playing like 2.5 minutes of Dead Inside.
Yeah.
When our performance was like 6 minutes, and I went crazy during Severed, and you never see it.
Nice.
So, but yeah, now it's funny to look back on, but it was one of the highlights of our career, man. Like, playing in front of 3 million people, so to speak. There's not a day I don't run into some sort of fan online that doesn't bring up Farm Club. It'll never go away. So, and Dead Inside, without having that song exist and doing well on the internet and people liking the demo version, we wouldn't have gotten signed. So
nice. And then we will move on to Severed.
Stay awake till day
So, I mean, and from what I can tell with Severed is from watching videos today, is it was definitely a set list staple that kind of stayed in for a long time. Am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely. That song just people liked. It's, for all intents and purposes, it's just, like barbarian core. It's as straightforward as it gets. That's a me and Andel's song. He and I wrote that one together. And there was kind of like one of those days where a couple bands had released some albums and that we were fans of. And we were like, man, it's just not as heavy as it could have been. And that was just like our answer to that. We were in that. I remember just he and I being at the rehearsal space and that song just came together really, really fast. And lyrically, like in the demo, I had no idea what the hell I was doing. It was just one of those like John Tardy from Obituary, Slowly We Rot type
Nice.
things where you just go in and there's really no words. You're just trying to make them sound like words. And Severed worked. So I had to like write and craft lyrics around my nonsense by the time it came to actually put it down for the album. So I couldn't even tell you what the lyrics are about at this time. They don't even like resonate with me because I remember that was just one of those ones where like, man, I got to get it done because people love this song. And I know it works, and this is the pattern that works, and what it sounds like on the demo, and people are used to. So, I have no idea what I'm saying on half of that shit the first time, though.
One thing with the album, too, that kind of sticks out from the nu metal tag that this gets, obviously there's a lot of nu metal sounds on this, but the one thing that kind of stands out to me throughout the whole thing is a lot of double bass. And, you didn't get a ton of that in nu metal, but with you guys, man, it was all over the place, and that's what kind of makes this album a little bit more timeless rather than a time capsule to me.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, we were definitely influenced by nu metal. It wasn't a bad word at that time.
Not at all.
So it was just another part of metal that we were interested in. And the double bass, we were huge fans of Morbid Angel and Deicide. And so, man, we like half the time, like if you start really honing in on some beats, like you could point out like where Rob might have suggested to Andel's like do the Deicide beat, and what that would mean would be double bass with hi hats, and then the cymbals would accent certain parts of the riff.
Yeah.
So we were very intuitive on a lot of these things and paying attention to what all the death metal bands were doing with a lot of their riffs. But we also liked Korn, and we also liked the first Soulfly album and Slipknot. So, I mean, it wasn't until like, our album getting delayed, which is what's interesting about the very first part of this was by the time our album came out, nu metal was a bad word. And then our album had leaked for a few months and people like shat on it. It was like that day, like we were like a day late and $1 short, if that makes sense.
But, and we'll kind of get into a little bit, but I mean, you guys were able to kind of be one of the few bands that put out an album like this, but also transitioned into that new wave of American heavy metal or whatever you want to call it. And I felt like you were accepted by that crowd too.
Yeah, I think that with Pass Out of Existence, we had too many influences that we were wearing on our sleeves where, we liked all those bands, and I think we were just showing that too much, where
right.
By the time we had started touring and really understanding who we were and playing together every night and listening to records together every night, that's kind of when we were were able to become a band. Before, we were guys that met up, 3-4 days a week and met at a rehearsal space and, we tried to write songs together for 3 hours a night. And then that's that, where now you're stuck with everybody for 24 hours a day and 18 months. So I think that that organic side really started to appear more so in Impossibility. It's not like the band's totally different aside from the tuning. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely way more nu metal going on in Pass Out of Existence, and a lot more, I guess, experimenting with trying trying to be a band that was accessible. That was something that was happening where, we came from a lot of us, like me personally, came from the hardcore scene. But then when you're like friends with a band like Spineshank, they're like, well, you got to have your radio song. And you're like, what? Oh, we do. You're right. Shit. Because, otherwise nobody's coming to your show. And that's kind of the stuff that like gets instilled in your mind a little bit. Like one of the things with us touring with 2 radio bands, if you will, right off the rip.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's actually, I think, why so much double bass on this album kind of throws me off, because, that really wasn't accessible at the time to radio
exactly.
or something, so it's everything, you sound like your influences are basically the same as mine, like Deftones, Korn and all that, plus Obituary,
sure.
Morbid Angel, Deicide, all that stuff too. So, it's all in there, but you also, at the same time, I remember, we got a call that, Roadrunner was interested in my old band. And so but they wanted us to do two new demos. And so instead of kind of doing what we would normally do, we kind of wrote a couple of Seven Dust sounding songs. And then they ended up putting out, like, I think about the same time as this album, and like, Slipknot and everything else starts coming out, and we're like, shit, we did the wrong way.
Right.
Because you just want your foot in the door, you just want to get in.
Yeah, no, exactly. You're being hit by so many directions of different things. And you're like, oh yeah, well that's cool. Oh, that's cool too. And you have no idea. We're basically thrown into the wolves' den. Like there's just no other way to put it, right? Like you go from a garage to playing Farm Club. There's a huge disconnect.
Well, let's dive into Lumps. What do you remember about Lumps?
Yeah. So that's got to be a Rob song. Maybe he and I, a couple riffs back and forth. That one was a fun song to play live. It's
a little more upbeat, a little faster.
Yeah. And the breakdown at the end always helped. Like that was one of those songs that you knew you could get the crowd like a good jump going on and up at the end, and they would just destroy each other, whichever one you wanted to call for. That was one where it was cool. Obviously, we're influenced by Pantera's Becoming on that one, right? Because there's the whammy pedal in the riff. So obviously, it's I think ours is like it's not even
all right,
that
Vanilla
different.
Ice.
But it's definitely influenced by Dime and Pantera, of course, wearing another good example of us wearing our influences on our sleeve. But hey, man, it's in drop A, so it sounds different.
Right, so. Exactly. and again, my notes say more painful lyrics, so
Yeah, man. This isn't an album where I think that like it's not that I'm not proud of the lyrics because you have to get it off your chest. And I'll talk about any of them, but like lyrically, like there's nothing. There's maybe a couple that are significant, but a lot of it is just teen angst, man. Like, hey, I broke up with my girlfriend when I was 17, and right now I'm really pissed about it, and it works over this fucking song.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't as fine-tuned as and I guess a little more global that I would eventually become. A lot of this is inward, getting it out, I guess, catharsis type behavior whereas I had a global message afterwards, but it was still cathartic.
Nice. And title track, Pass Out of Existence.
I like this song. I just think the bridge is cool. Like
my one note I have, my one note I have, experimental bridge / Deftones.
Yeah, very Deftones, exactly. But we were into that kind of stuff, and it was important for the band to show dynamics. If it happened and it happened naturally, then yeah, that's cool. That was a natural thing that happened in the rehearsal space. It wasn't planned. It was again another moment that worked in the rehearsal space, and it just maybe kind of got a little more uncomfortable playing it live, right? Because that's insecurity, right? Because it's so different, and like, oh man, what if we had these dynamics during our heavy set? The people will get bored. I think those are like some of the things that a young band like us, me especially, maybe as a front man, where I'm like, oh no, I'm very vulnerable in this position. It's not heavy. We can't play this with Slayer. Oh my God, they'll boo us off the stage if we have this Deftones type part in our song. So I mean, on one hand, we definitely took the chance and made sure that we had dynamics, but at the same time, it wasn't until later, in our career, that we would actually have the balls to play it and play it well.
The one thing I noticed a lot on this album was kind of you'd have a lot of spacey bridges, and then you would come back with like the main riff halftime, and then fourth time. It's just like you guys loved the slowing down of the riff and just making it an enormously heavy and aggressive. Man, yeah, that's a nod to Machine Head partly, and of course Crowbar as well. Mm-hmm. And just, man, when a down. Oh yeah.
I love it when a band can just do the ending of that first down record. That just says it all for me. Like, if you want to sum up what I like, all right, give me a heavy ass riff like the ending of the first Down album, and then let it fade out, for 30 minutes. And then not only are you going to fade it out, but you're going to bring it back in and still jam on it again. So yeah, I love the heavy riff coming back. I love the halftime feel. Whenever we could do that and it made sense to the song, that was a trait that stayed with us through the whole career for sure.
And then the next track is it Abio or Abio? Do you know?
Abeo. This was just, okay. So this is one of those hilarious things where you are under contract under a record label that wants a specific amount of songs for mechanical royalty purposes. And you don't have that specific amount of songs. So you're like, well, what do we do here? I got an idea. Let's just, have this segue. Bands have segues and little interludes and things like that. And that was just a really piss poor interlude that's something we make fun of constantly. It's been an inside joke of the band's for 20 years.
Nice.
If we're ever discussing things, the set list sometimes. All right, hey guys, working on the tour. You get a set list to be like a Bayo 3 times. That was just one of those ones where it's like it serves absolutely no purpose, and I don't think any fan would care if they'd ever heard that song again. And the only reason it exists was to get the proper mechanical royalty rate for our album.
Wow.
Which is a very that's a very financial thing to say. That's probably going to go over a lot of people's heads.
Yeah, I mean, it's anytime you ever talk about record contracts, you're like, well, there's 12 songs of the album, but you're only going to get paid for 10. You're like, what? It doesn't even make any sense. But yeah.
Right, you get it.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, we're like, no, you need to have 14 songs and 2 B-sides, but we only have shit. All right, well, here comes a Bayo.
Well, nice, man. Well, I wrote down the next song as The Jam, so it's Split. creatively spelled SP space LIT. Oh man,
Right.
What a jam, dude.
Yeah, I love that one. That's a Rob song for sure. Just a great groove to it. Very cool. Just vibe. Like that's just one of the songs that helped us break through. We shot the video. This is a cool story about that one. We shot the video at our buddies. Like, okay, so Todd Bell, who wound up being, a lot of Chimaira fans know that Todd did our Dehumanizing documentary and our Coming Alive documentary, a couple of videos for us. He's our old high school friend. He moved out to San Francisco and he's like, just starting. This is before Dehumanizing, all that stuff. He's like, I want to do a video for you guys. So we had a day off and we went into San Francisco and we go to this warehouse where our other friend Garrett was working. It's like, yeah, these guys are special effects guys, and they said that we can use their warehouse. I'm like, all right, cool. Well, it turns out like 2 years later, these guys wind up being Mythbusters.
Oh, wow.
So if you watch the split video, just look at the background. You'll realize we are in the Mythbusters studio, and this is before they were ever a thing. And another Mythbusters Chimaira connection is because of our buddy Garrett. They used one of our songs on an episode about plants and what type of music helps them grow. So they played like our music and some classical music. And it's just a weird connection we have that not too many people know, that, you know, we're 1 degree away from the Mythbusters family. And we've hung out with Jamie and all those guys. Nice. And before they were ever a thing.
Or are they good dudes? They seem like good dudes. So are they good dudes?
Absolutely. And this was crazy. So they were like, not only just, you know, working on weird experiments, but they did special effects for movies and stuff.
Okay.
And they had worked on a movie called Jade, and which is interesting in itself. And no, it was no connection to our song Jade, but apparently I'd never seen the movie, so I guess there's a scene where there's a brutally murdered person in it, whatever. But anyway, I walk into the bathroom, and when you flip on the light, you just see a bloody, naked corpse just disemboweled on the bathroom floor.
Oh, wow.
Very, very shocking. They had a great sense of humor, so let's just put it that way. But yeah, very nice. And that was like the coolest thing was that was our first music video. Our buddy got to do it, and it was the first thing that ever went on MTV, which was still a thing. So we were very like, you know, that's, you know, for us, like, holy shit, we have a video now and it's getting played, you know? So that was the song we thought was, you know, mainstream enough, if you will, that could appeal to a larger audience and didn't have too much double bass or, it had a hook. And if the song was received well enough, it could probably have been, you know, reworked in a radio fashion, but it never got that big, obviously. Probably too heavy. So especially since I say the C word.
How many takes did it take to get the choreographed jump at the beginning?
Oh man, we love that stuff. So we were all about the jumping and
you did that on Farm Club too, but
yeah. So by that point in the game, we were fine-tuned choreographed machines. So, you know, that's first take, man. We didn't have time to do multiple takes.
Yeah, they had to get in there and try to bust some myths.
Yeah, exactly. They were, you know, seeing if you can shoot a gas tank with a gun and then the car will explode or something.
My favorite one they ever did for some reason was they were trying to the saying, it's like shooting fish in a barrel, and they actually tried to shoot fish in a barrel, and it was very hard to do. So, so I always thought that was always my favorite myth they busted.
Yeah, great show.
Great show. All right, we got painting the white to gray.
days I think I'd rather die. Running, never getting, I find myself wondering like always situations I can never hide. Crying, tears of anger, hate depressed, I never know the me. Never know what to do. Spit, pour out the life I'm bottled under fire. I take a cry for something else to justify. I'm in a daze, scarred by pain. I'm feeling forced to watch to change. Painting the white to grey. Painting the white to grey. Nobody shivering. Blood dripping from the skin. Painting the white to grey. Painting the white to plastic.
Cool. So this was a song that came from our EP and Present Darkness, and it was our biggest song on that album, and that was the song that got us college radio play. So we reworked it for the album because it had a decent life on the radio through our independent label. We'll kind of, now we can have a bigger audience through our actual album. Plus, we didn't have that many songs and needed X amount of songs. So it all worked out. So we just reworked it, and that's, why that song it continued, and it still did well. And it was like a live staple. If we were to play a show right now and play that song, it would be very well received, even though it's, maybe not as well known by our later audience, like from our old school fans. That's definitely one of their favorite ones.
It's funny you say that because listening to it again today, that one kind of stuck out as it had a different vibe to it. So I guess it was because it came from another era.
So, and it's not as heavy as the original. If you were to go check out the original on this Present Darkness, that one's a lot raw, more raw. And this one brought in some of the elements of hey, we're with a major label producer. Let's throw in major label sounds and major label tones and different things that we never would have brought in on the hardcore version of the song. So, it almost watered it down a little bit. I think that, and that's definitely my fault on that one. But I think the original version's heavier, and it's still a really fun song to play. It just, the chorus is cool. When you kids love saying painting the white to gray for whatever reason, it's just the hook, it works. And it was always a song that people liked saying. And again, I think it's one of those songs where it's the lyrics don't necessarily always have to matter in metal. It's the emotion that's being conveyed and the realism sometimes that it's why it's universal. Somebody in I don't know. It's just Lebanon's the first thing that comes to my mind. Might not really understand what the hell I'm saying, but they feel it, and it means something to them, and they understand the emotion that's resonating. So while the lyric itself, on paper doesn't really make sense except for to the author, it was somehow if we play that, you hear 1,000 kids sing that chorus, and so it's really interesting.
It's funny to hear a vocalist and a lyricist say that. And I've never been a lyric guy. I'll latch onto a word or a phrase, but very rarely unless it was today and I'm going to do this with you, but sit down with a record and actually what does this song actually mean? And I don't know how many times I've actually wanted to know, or let alone cared what the song actually meant, When
it comes to metal, I've never given a shit whatsoever. And my personal stuff, right, or songs I latch on to, to me, it's the soundtrack to my life. If Lane Staley's singing about heroin, that has no impact to me.
Right.
But if he says down in a hole, that works for me. I get that, right? It's a total different. It's my own soundtrack. It's not his, right? It becomes mine. So I don't really like to always, unless a fan specifically asks and want to know, that's your journey. You do whatever you please with it. I don't really look into it myself. Now, if we're talking hip hop, it's a total different story because you're talking street code, and they're talking in metaphor, and I want to know what the fuck's being said, man. And I stay on top of that. I'll go on to the Genius websites, and I'm all right, well, so what does this line mean? If Rick Ross says this, I really want to know what the fuck that really means. And that doesn't happen in metal, unfortunately. There's nothing in code. It's very like on the nose, like I am angry and this is the reason.
Yeah, it's almost like like I've always said, it'd be like keyword metal. You know, you say a couple of keywords and, you know, get in and out and we're good.
Yeah, man, for me, it's about like what vowels sound the best over. I'm not even messing with you, man.
No,
like,
I totally get it.
If you're like, you know, like scatting over a song, like ooh, ah, ee, ah, like what feels the best, what lands the best, and you kind of like start to like, at least I do anyway, like I feel it that way, and then I'm like, oh, well, then words start happening, you know, and like severed. Like it's not like I was like, all right, I wrote this elaborate song and I finally had the perfect composition to put to it. It's the other way around. It's like that riff made me say severed. You know, that's all I could do with it, right? The fucking riff is barbaric. So I got to say something barbaric to accentuate that. But I want it to have feeling and have meaning. So it has to get deeper after that fact.
There was an old MTV commercial, and it was making fun of lyrics, and it's like, does love truly come from above? You know, I don't know why it's making me think of that. But all right, man. Well, let's move on to Taste My ... with 4 dots.
Did I do 4? That's so improper.
I know, right?
Wow. Well, you know, Star Wars got away with it, so I guess I can get away with it. You know, but everyone knows 3 is the appropriate amount of dots for an ellipsis. So yeah, that was an interesting one. That was when Jim joined the band. So we had a couple bass players before he ever joined, and now, he had come from a band that focused a little more on heavier radio type stuff. And he was also a big Korn guy too. So I think that song has a lot of Korn feel to like the verses and stuff, and just really big open notes. And I think that was, you know, we were feeding off his energy, because when he came in the band, the technical stuff was going to be a little bit of a challenge for him to learn right off the rip. So we were also working on new music. So that song just kind of came organically with him in the room. And it catered to his style a little bit more, but it was also, we liked playing it too, because it was just heavy. You know, it felt heavy in the studio before vocals got to it. I really love the ending of that song. That's just heavy. That's yes. Me and Anvil's riff right there. And, that I remember the drumming was very influenced. There's the band that has a similar name to us, Candiria, and that was very influenced by them. Like nice. They always had some really cool parts like that. And I remember, I don't know how like, you know, how other bands are, but like when we would communicate to Anvils, you'd always just communicate via which drummer to emulate. Like, all right, we need Raymond from Fear Factory here. Okay, you know, you know, we need Joey. Okay, like, you know, not just a bunch of rolls and fills. And so he's very good at that type of stuff, but he always made it himself, you know. But when we're writing a riff or something, we kind of hear, you know, a different drummer, like how would the drums go? So, so I remember saying to him, like, Candiria, that part. So it's just really jazzy, and the fills he's playing at the end of that is it's just really cool over that groove. I just don't like how my vocals came out on that song. It's just very
got a lot of effects going on, I feel.
Yeah, just I couldn't sell the performance. You know what I mean? Like what was written versus what I was able to like pull off are two different things. So like things always sound better in your head, and then when you go to actually make it try to work are two different things. And I think I had like committed to one idea, and that was that. Like I think the demo versions of that song are drastically different, and if I'm not mistaken, although I'd have to go back and listen, but at the time I remember we just thought the demo was better. And yeah, I don't know. I think I shit the bed on that one. That song could have been a lot better. Not even front.
But man, yeah, my notes on that one are just like riffs galore. The heavy outro was definitely on there. Spacey bridge again. But yeah, man, that was in my re-listen was just like, man, these riffs are just like pretty amazing, man. And just a side note, how is Jim doing with the kind of everything shut down? I mean, I know you guys are probably all out of work and stuff, but I mean, him being a barber now.
He's home. I don't know. He texted me. He's like, I'm on a paid vacation. So I'm like, hey, I'm on an unpaid vacation, but I'm healthy. So.
It's funny watching old videos of him with all the long hair, and then now he's suave and slick back.
Yeah, everyone's a little different. I don't have dreads or
yeah, right. Me neither.
And Rob's all skinny and looking slim, and yeah, everyone's got a little bit of a different vibe going on. But Taste My was one that we thought was going to be like a big song that just didn't quite click. But man, like yeah, that's a me song. A lot of the riffs and Andals had a big part in that, like making like that ending. It's just a whatever ga 010 riff, but like the shit he's playing under there makes that so awesome.
Nice. And then let's go to Rizzo.
Cool song
About Mark Rizzo, correct?
Yeah, right, yeah. So that's Stefan from the Deftones wrote that song. And how that came to be was actually, I want to say through Tom Hazard. And Tom knew all those dudes and hung out at the Rainbow, and the Rainbow in LA is like a restaurant a lot of musicians hang out at. And man, it was just weird. One night, I found myself sitting next to Jim. We were in LA. I don't know how we got here, but we wound up at Stefan's place, and all these like dudes like Fear Factory, Be Real, all these people were there, and they're listening to Dead Inside. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, how do these guys are listening to our band? Like, I look over and like Be Real's bobbing his head, and I'm like, are you kidding me right now? This is real life. And Stefan just liked it. He liked the band, and he wanted to be a part of it. And like, I was like, man, would you be on a song? And he came down and just hung out, and him and Andals sat there, and actually him and Rob and Andals, and they wrote that song together in one day. And then I came, and the name didn't have a title for the name, but that was the name of the dog at the studio.
Oh, nice.
There's really no meaning behind that name. Like someone's going to be really upset right now. Like, you know, they thought it had some huge meaning, and they based their whole life on the meaning of what they thought that song meant. And now they're going to be shattered to find out it was just the name of this dog at the studio.
Well,
or maybe
awesome.
I'm thinking a little too deep. Yeah, but no, Steph's cool. We played it once live with him, which was awesome. We got to do that, and wish you would have got to do it a bunch more, but how often you get to cross paths and the Deftones are home or something,
Especially, kind of going into your first major album, with those type of people around, and then not only are they around, obviously writing with you and then performing on the album, man. What a great introduction to the album, which is funny because I almost feel like you guys would have pushed that a little bit more, but I don't really remember that being a big selling point of the album, him being on it.
So part of us was, I think a lot of times songs get bigger if the band like really pushes it themselves too. And because these are just such weird things that kind of set a younger band back, but like tuning and the amount of guitars on tour. And that song was played in G standard, and we normally played in drop A. And it's just like one of those things you just can't convert it correctly, or another excuse comes up. It's just so low, it's inaudible at the time, or we could, it's just excuse after excuse, and it never became a staple. And it was a lot of it came down to like tuning reasons, which a fan probably doesn't make, that makes no sense to them, but you understand.
Yeah, I got you. I'm right there with you, man.
You can't have a sixth guitar on tour each guy.
Yeah, that's takes up too much room in the van or the trailer or whatnot. So yeah, you can't do that just for one song.
Yeah, and it was just something that we just didn't think we'd be able to play. Some songs don't work very well live either. Like the verse, I remember just not feeling. I don't know how it is like for other people, but like you just kind of know, when you're playing something, like if it feels good playing it live or not. And that's just one that just didn't feel that, didn't click a few times we tried.
All right, let's go to Sphere.
Smiling face of pure gold, reaching your hand out to touch mine. Perhaps all I needed was your smile, a nice compliment or two. Where were you a few weeks ago when I was wanting to die? I felt so worthless. You saved me, watching me almost fall under. You were with me.
Part 2 of this Present Darkness songs that were repurposed to have a how many is it, 14 song album that we only had 12 songs for, or 11. So what we did with that one, that was the biggest difference, was the ending, and that was a Mudrock idea, and one of the bigger contributions he had for that song. And the biggest difference is the ending just keeps getting slower and slower and heavier and heavier. And that was the first time we'd ever learned, which is a trick that's common now, but we were, as a new band, like our minds were blown to watch a click track slow down. Like, wait, you could do that? You could have it slow down each bar, and you keep slowing down and slowing down. But we wrote that song, for Present Darkness, and it was a song that did well live. It just was heavy. That riff was really heavy. And then that's a Hagar song. That's definitely got his riffs all over them. And Mudrock was like, let's make this ending super long and super heavy. And that was a really good idea. Because it's
right up your alley.
It was really, definitely. And it was that was really cool to play live when, man, if you play like a nice solid venue with, 1,500 people, one of those rooms like the Rave that just sounds really good. Mm-hmm. And you're playing that shit, really nice and tight and slow. I think the slower it is, the better it's going to sound, like in terms of sonics, because there's more breathing room and it just sounds heavier. So yeah, that's just cool sonically to play live. I don't know if the song overall is that great, but that part sure is cool.
It's got a lot of squeals, a lot of groove. It kind of has some more Dimebag in it that I felt.
Yeah, man, for sure. Yeah, definitely has some Fear Factory as well.
You were talking earlier about DJs and scratching and the electronic side of stuff, and just I just for my other podcast we did a breakdown of Obsolete, and just talking about just that bridge and Edge Crusher where they're like mixing white noise and oh man, it's just such a great classic breakdown.
Absolutely. They had great sampling, and that they were definitely an influence. And Chris is definitely hard on himself on this album in terms of samples because, again, we all had a lot of outside influence on this record, but the guy that helped him with the programming was, he came over from like Seven Dust Records and stuff. So he was all about, well, you got that Corona.
Yeah.
So he was all about putting as much sequencing and sampling on the album as possible. And some of it is a little dated now. And I understand why Chris is, it's the same thing I would beat myself up for with some of my lyrics that I'm not proud of, looking back at. But, again, at the time we all felt it, it all worked. And some of it we were, maybe a little iffy on here and there, but we just, it's kind of one of those compromise things like, well, these guys know what they're talking about. But yeah, there's tons of samples on our album, and those types of things wouldn't happen without Fear Factory or and their contributions. Like when I found out like they use like Terminator for demanufacture, I thought that was the coolest thing ever.
Oh yeah, a couple more tracks left, but before we get too much into that, what kind of touring did you guys do on this? What was the kind of the first tours out the gate and the bigger ones of the cycle?
Well, we lucked out, man. We did some touring beforehand, and then, as I mentioned earlier, that the album got delayed a bit. So we wound up being on the road a lot longer than we had hoped, promoting nothing. Because we sat out there the whole summer, and it just got not shelved, but pushed back. And so the first tours we did was we went out with Spine Shank again. And but then the first big one was with Slayer and American Head Charge, and it was right after 9/11, which is another thing that definitely didn't help the release of our album.
Yeah.
Or anybody's for that matter at the time. But we were out on tour with Slayer and during that whole ordeal, and it was huge for us, obviously. But it was also, it wasn't always the best show. I mean, we're opening for Slayer and we're a new band. I mean, that's just hard on anybody. I'll never forget, we played in Chicago at the Aragon Ballroom. I don't know if you've been there, but it holds about, I don't want to be way off, but I think around 5,000 to 6,000 people. And it's a big fucking room. And we played for 30 minutes and didn't really have much of a response. And I remember at the end of the night, like, how many CDs did we sell? Because, at least you could count on people like at least liking it. One. Holy shit. What is the percentage? How low of a percentage of people didn't like us enough to buy a CD?
CD.
But at least we didn't get booed off the stage, and so that was the biggest tour. We toured with Kitty. That was a good tour for us because we were like a heavier version and people didn't know who we were. Not heavier version, but heavier band compared to the bands that were on that tour. It was Kitty, Il Nino, and No One. And we're obviously the heaviest band on that tour. So that did really well for us. And then we did some headlining because our album came out and it just didn't do that great off the rip. But we wanted to still continue and tour on it as much as we could and do some headlining. And so we ended the tour cycle with headlining, and we took 36 Crazy Fists on their very first tour. So that was, I think, who supported us at the end.
Nice. Great band.
Absolutely.
All right, so next up we've got Forced Life.
That was a lot of staccato stuff, groove. That's a me and Andals and Rob song, I would imagine. And another live staple. That was one we were proud of, right? That was one we could pull off in the Resurrection era and not feel like silly. Like once we started playing Dead Inside in like 2010, it felt like really bad and awkward.
The guitar work, about the 2-minute mark of this, the guitar work kind of almost, foreshadows what's to come with Chimaira, because there's a lot of interesting guitar work in this.
Yeah, and, that's that cool. That's the Rob part. Yeah, all that death metal stuff. Yeah, that's got Rob all over it. And absolutely, I agree with you. Yeah, and it stood the test of time, comparatively speaking to other songs on that album. And it's one of those cool songs too for a live aspect with lighting, because when you have songs like that where you have tight stops and the band is playing really tight, it just makes for a good entertainment for the audience. Here's a funny one that just made me think of this.
Okay.
And so Forest Life has the intro is dig-a-dit, 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 dig-a-dit. Okay, and then Split intro is da-da-da-da, bop-bop-bop-bop. Anyway, long story short, we're playing live one night, and Andals is playing Forest Life, and the rest of the band is playing Split.
Nice.
You want to talk about a fucking train wreck. When you have two, and nobody can figure out what's happening, and you just have two just really bad clashing, tight stopping. Pretty amazing.
And were you guys playing the click tracks and stuff back then, or no?
So we've never played to a click track.
Okay.
The only time we ever played to a click track in our career was the reunion show in 2017.
Oh, wow.
Which was so nerve-wracking for people, especially Rob, because we've never played to it. And the only reason we played to one was for video. And the only reason we did that was because when we started putting the video together, it was Chris and I that did all the video content. I was very specific where he wasn't. He was making material that you just hit the button and it can just loop, and then just like a sample, you go to the next part and then the video changes, where I was like making specific hits that had to line up with a kick drum or something. And I wasn't realizing that we needed to be on a click. So it turned into a whole big fucking fiasco, and we pulled it together at the 11th hour. So no, we had never been playing to a click our entire career. Okay. And it was the scariest thing ever until it just, when it first happened.
Nice. All right, and then I guess we'll call it the last track before the last track on some albums, but Options. What do you got for Options?
That's another one we make fun of a lot. In terms of like when we're writing our set lists. All right, so we're going to open with Options. It's just, I don't know, man. I don't think I have any good memories of that. I think I liked singing it and performing it in terms of recording it, because I was like, I was able to pull off harmonies for the first time in my life. Cool. But man, the song just doesn't work in any way. I just don't like it. I think it just tried too hard to be something that it never should have been. I couldn't tell you the last time I've listened to it. It has to have been at least 18 years.
Wow. It's been about an hour and 18 minutes for me since the last time I heard it. But I'll
take a listen back at it. Maybe I won't feel so bad about it now in hindsight. But at the time, it was just, I don't know. It just didn't work. You know, it's like one of those, I don't know. I think we were trying too hard in that caught up in that wave of like trying to make something that's appealing, you know, like pressure of, well, shit, we have to have accessible songs and things like that. And it just doesn't work for us. Like, we're better off not doing it that way. But I mean, maybe people like that song, but I guess like we don't like it because we see through our own bullshit. Does that make sense?
I gotcha. You talked about this whole time, you know, about writing a lot of this stuff. Did you write on guitar, or were you like a you know, like make it like do like this or making noises with your mouth, you know?
I'm a guitar guy, so a lot of the times, especially in the early days, I would play rhythm, or we would have 3 guitarists in the room, or some days it would just be me and Andals that would go down there. So there wasn't really much rules on anything. It was just like, who's got the riff, you know, like we're stuck on a part. Hey, give me the guitar. I got an idea. So a lot of things just happened organically. Like if Rob and I write, like a lot of times, like, you know, he might have a riff and then you get stuck and then like, oh, I got an idea. And then he hands the guitar to me and then I write the next part and then I'm stuck. So I hand it back to him, or I'm like, hey, I've got this riff, write a melody over it. So it's always just been an organic process that way. So when like certain songs are written or something like that, if in the liner notes, it's genuine or generally indicating who wrote like the majority of the riffs in the song.
And then Jade. 13 minutes, 57 seconds of, I guess you guys just went self-indulgent on this one, but talk about Jade a little bit.
That song was something that, I don't know where the hell that song came out of. It's a me and Andal song. And I remember Rob being there too when we were writing it, but yeah, it's, heavy. It's a drop G song, so we were stoked to be playing. At least I was playing shit that low, and again, that wasn't that common back then. And it was just we closed our reunion show with it, so nice. I think it's one of those songs that had some shelf life. The ending is the reason it's so long is because the song ends after like 6 minutes, but then it's just a lot of noise and sample stuff and keyboard stuff. And that type of like that style is left over from a Cleveland thing. I don't know if it's a Cleveland thing. Well, it's international, but it's Cleveland in my retrospect, but noise albums. So there was a band here called Integrity that everybody should listen to because they basically invented metalcore. And the singer also had a noise band project. So I just thought it was cool to hear noise and stuff, and you fall asleep to an album back in the day and like shit just went. So yeah, self-indulgent for sure, but also somewhat influenced by the Cleveland noise scene, as well as like, hey, we got this keyboard guy, like, let's have him do some stuff, you know?
No, it was cool. It's just it's funny the like 13 plus minutes, and then you did talk about it kind of going off into that noisy aspect of everything there. But the overall, what are your I know you guys obviously went to change your style a little bit the next album and beyond, but I mean, looking back at it now and kind of going track by track, what are your thoughts on this album?
I mean, I don't love the album, but I don't hate it as much as I used to. I've grown to like, it's just one of those things like where you are, let's say like you go to school and you take the shitty high school photo and you're like, God damn it. I tried so hard to like have the perfect hair day and I wore the great shirt and this fucking photographer.
Yeah. Right.
You're just, but then like all the girls are like, man, I love that picture of you. And the next thing you know, you have a new girlfriend or something. So that's kind of what happened is like, we were proud of it while we were making it. Of course, we got into some heated arguments while we were doing it. And it was a creative labor of love and a lot of stuff was thrown at us. So for the effort we put into it, man, I give us an A. Like we weren't, we weren't doing anything but trying our best and doing what we thought was the best path for the band. But once we were done with it and like, starting to tour on it and like starting to listen to like actual feedback and getting ourselves out of that bubble, we saw a lot of room for improvement. But that said, like I said, we made a lot of fans that are still with us to this day. So it's a hugely important album for us. And I recognize that way more than I did at the time because the wounds are too fresh. You're like, God damn it. We tried so hard and people didn't like it as much, but the people that do like it, they're the ones that are still here. They're the ones that are still like on Facebook or my Twitter or something and hanging out. Like that means a lot. So, if we were to ever be able to get to play again, like we obviously need to put a little more consideration into some of that older material. That was the biggest complaint of the reunion show was we didn't go far enough down the rabbit hole
Right.
of the older material. But again, like some of it is just embarrassment that's probably unnecessary, by this point. It's like, get over yourselves,
No, it was fun to go back and listen to. And I do remember, adding Split and Let Go and Severed to many a mixtape for the car and all that stuff. So, I probably had this on cassette because I was very late to the CD game. So
yeah. So the coolest thing I got to do with this, man, I mean, obviously touring with Slayer, but, this is just interesting and how things work out and like, yeah. And fate is, I went to see Machine Head. They opened for Slayer after Davidian, which is what I'm assuming is the first song. I had never heard of the band. I turned to my friend and I'm like, man, I want to be in a band like this on Roadrunner one day. And on October 2nd of 2001, I am on tour with Machine Head, and me and Rob each go to the mall together and buy our CDs. Supercharger's released the same day, and he buys Pass Out of Existence. That moment right there is everything I basically ever had set out to do, and we had already knew we were going to get a chance to tour with Slayer. So in terms of like goals and accomplishments and mountains to climb, I was done then. And that's kind of sucks.
I love it. No, that's awesome. I love it.
But everything that I had ever envisioned, it was like 2001. It's like it happened right then and there. And then so after that, it was like we got to create our own destiny. And it was a collective thing. Like, what can Chimaira become as a unit? That was just like my young kid aspirations, and they were achieved. And that was really cool.
Well, that's awesome, man. It's definitely a great way to kind of end the record talk. You guys did the reunion in 2017, and from every just from the internet alone, just looked like an amazing show, amazing crowd. It's crazy. not crazy, I guess, but it's, I know the end of the band for you was tough, but then to kind of do that in 2017 had to have been a nice way to kind of end it again for you.
Yeah, it's a better bookend. If that's the last thing we ever do, great, because the last thing that we ever did before that was not so great. So yeah, the band fell apart. Shit happens. We got on each other's nerves, and business and labels and marriages and divorces and anything you want to throw at us. And for that moment, all that went by the wayside, and that whole show was 6 dudes like fucking settling it. You know what I mean? Like, there's no bad blood, there's no animosity, there's nothing left over. We're able to just stand on that stage and have a good time, and that was the whole goal. And to have a much better ending, if that's the ending, right? We haven't been able to really put anything in motion because I wound up getting cancer, but it's not like we don't want to, talk or anything like that, or maybe hope we can play a show again someday. But there's just, at this time, obviously nothing in the books, but it'd be cool. And I know that everyone's open to it. Just got to be the right time, and obviously got to be healthy, and we needed a reason. Like, a lot of people were like, yeah, do a show next year, do it again. And I'm like, no, because then everyone's just going to expect it. Yeah. There's no reason to. We just did this. It took us a year and a half. It took us a year and a half to put it together, and 8 months of it was just communication. Like, hey man, how are you? Right. A lot of that is, it's got to start there. And and then the type of production we put into it was just very grandiose is the best word I can use. And we really wanted to make sure that everyone in there went to a show, not just got to see us play live. So it was very cool, and I'm happy we sold it out really quick. We had the biggest bar night in the Agora history, which is a venue that's been around for 50 years. It's one of the biggest venues in Cleveland. So that was a huge accomplishment, and much cooler than saying like, yeah, the band just randomly split up after some shitty show in Texas.
Right. Yeah. Much better way to end the, and it's it's gotta be nice for you. Even, Josh, the show, he'll talk about, he always wants to put together a tour of, Shadows Fall and Chimaira. He'll always throw you guys in to like not necessarily a nostalgia tour, but kind of getting some of those bands back together. So I mean, to kind of still be regarded in that aspect has to be good for you.
Absolutely. I mean, definitely not trying to stay relevant in music, but it's really cool that a lot of people are still there. Like, yeah. If I post something on Facebook, it's as if I'm still in the band, like people are just there and they're talking to me, and so that's a really good feeling. And that's like, what is the biggest thing about metal that's so different than every other genre is you just create fans that are part of, your community, and they stick with you and they're there for a long, long time. And, so I'm grateful for that. And grateful that it's, I'm still able to jump online and talk about stuff like this, and that people are still interested in it after all this time. And so I hope that makes me think that, well, shit, we did something right, because people still give a shit. And if we were to do something again, and I think it would do, another show or something, it would do just as well. So it's a good feeling and a good position to be in.
And the cancer didn't affect your voice at all, the surgery or cancer or anything?
So that was a huge concern of mine. I believe Rod Stewart had something similar, and I don't believe he did. He did. And
did he reach out to you?
Yeah, he lost his voice for a bit, and he had to go, because it's not common, but it's very easy to accidentally snip part of the vocal cord, and then you're done. So I was concerned, like, I was recording some guests. I record guest vocals here and there for bands, and I was like, man, like the last one I did it with Rob's. Rob produced it for the band, and I was like, man, is this going to be the last time I ever sing? Like there was like a moment of, some unnerving, like fear of the unknown. Now, to be honest with you, I haven't tried to sing, so I don't think there's going to be anything wrong, because I'm able to speak and there's no pain or anything like that. So I can't imagine that anything has changed, but I can't guarantee that it hasn't because I haven't tried. I haven't been in a position to try. So it's only been about two months now that I'm healed, and now that we're in locked down, I don't know where I'm going to be singing anytime soon. So.
And a lot of people follow you online for Chimaira, but mostly because of your strong meme game, correct?
Yeah, I would rather be known for my strong meme game this day and age. That's not true, but no, that's not true. But I do, man, I go online because, and I like to post memes and funny stuff because when I'm going through shit and going through feeds, I see just so much complaining or so much nonsense or authoritative viewpoints on stuff that people have no business even talking about, let alone having an authoritative position. So, man, I really, all I want to do is just post stuff that's hopefully going to make somebody laugh and break up the monotony. And if it makes me laugh out loud, then, and if I can make Lauren laugh with the same meme and my other friends that I text it to, then I know it's going to Facebook.
Well, you have a process, I just see definitely. It. I'll share it. But you know what? I made I made a meme yesterday, and within 20 minutes, someone like took it, reworded it, put their like tag on it, and then put I made something. And I'm like, you motherfucker, man! I literally just made that with my phone, and you're taking credit for it.
Wow.
So
well, I don't make the memes. I am a curator of quality memes.
Well, I typically am too. So, but I just happened to get a little piece of inspiration and made one, and then
nice.
and then
you got it ripped off.
Yeah, then it got ripped off. They reworded it a little bit, made it something else. I was like, bunch of assholes, man.
Unreal. But man, that's it's just such a. I enjoy when I post something like that and I see the people that take the extra effort to use the laughing response versus just the thumbs up.
Nice.
And I know, like, all right, because then I laugh as well. I'm like, that person's laughing. Yeah, that person's laughing. I don't even know who these fucking people are, but I'm like, yes, they're laughing because it's funny.
It is,
and
funny.
And that's what they do. And I'm going to continue to post silly shit because it makes me laugh.
Once again, man, thanks for taking the time tonight doing Pass Out of Existence. And while we're in quarantine, maybe we can just make this a running thing and kind of just go on to the impossibility of reason in a week or two and just make a little sidecast, little Chimaira sidecast or something.
Hey, man, whatever you want to do, and I'm always around, and I appreciate the
I know
chat,
you're not going anywhere.
It's cool to talk about some of this stuff because, you bring back some fun memories.
Cool, man. Well, have a good rest of your night, and I'll talk to you soon.
You do the same, man. Take care.
All right, man.
Hey.